First and foremost, let me go ahead and bring in my comrade JB. JB, welcome. What's up?
Good to see you here and good to see your audience. They're all here in and accounted for. Some of the people who I've seen on my channel. So good to see some of y'all on here.
That's right. That's right.
Sabby and JB show on Sabby Sabs.
Back at it. For those who don't know, so JB is one of my comrades from Revolutionary Blackout Network, and JB and I have a show on RBN called the Sabby and JB Show, where we usually cover like pop culture to give you like a break from electoral politics, just to be honest. But JB also has his own channel. If you want to talk a little bit about that, JB, before we dive in.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a channel on YouTube called the JB Font Channel. If you guys would like to, you guys can also go there as well. I do news and interviews similar to Sabby Sabs. Yes, I'm copying off of Sabby. Why? Because you gotta imitate the best. So, but I do that as well. I also take things from a different perspective as a gay black male who is also disabled, and I also implement that into it. And so it's still from a left perspective, but I do that on my channel. And I also do readings of different books as well on my channel. One of the books that I'm reading is called Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Yvonne Price. I do that reading. And I'm also in process of reading Asada Shakur's autobiography on my channel as well. So I do those too. So if you guys ever want to, you guys can also go to my channel, and you guys can also follow me on Twitter at JBFont2.
That's right. Eric, when you get a chance, if you can put the link in the chat for JB's channel so people can follow him as well. JB and I are going to talk about this story with Marianne Williamson. So I think, JB, you might have been the one that sent me the article, and I was like, oh, boy.
Actually, no, you sent it to me. You saw it first, and now you were like, I was like, whoa.
Okay, yeah. I forget sometimes. But we went into this article. This is not the first time that a staffer has come forward to complain about Marianne Williamson's campaign. This time, however, it's not one person. It appears there are 7 people. Let me go ahead and bring it up. And I think the way we're going to do this is there are different sections of this article. This article is very lengthy, so we're going to hit each section with a point here or there and not read the entire article because it is really long. I'm just keeping it real, guys. So this article came forward. Now, this article was written by Jen Dyes. Now, for those who are not aware, Jen, she was a part of Status Quo at one point. I thought she was a co-host for Status Quo. But this is the article that really, I think, has people's heads turning. I don't know if you guys have heard this story yet, but it says exclusive 7 ex-Marianne Williamson staffers say stop supporting her. So it says, read the former staffer's letter alleging abuse, mismanagement, and concerns over the campaign direction. So here it says 7 former, actually, I'm gonna make this just a little bit bigger for you guys. 7 former staff members allege deception, sabotage, gaslighting, emotional abuse, erratic behavior, conditions leading to extreme staff turnover, and general dysfunction beyond what they have ever experienced in political campaigns or professional work. Before I dive into this, JB, I have to ask you, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like this is a smear attempt, or do you feel like there's valid points in this article?
When I first saw this, one of the first things I had in mind was, I don't see stories about this regarding male candidates very often.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a part of me that goes, yeah, but what about RFK Jr.? What about Donald Trump? What about Ron DeSantis? What about Vivek Ramaswamy? What about people who are running that are men that are in this race? Because the thing is that while there's probably a lot of validity to this. I don't see this too much in the camp of men. So that's the thing. But at the same time, you look in through the article, it actually talks about the history of Marianne Williamson being this way. I just wish that, not that I wish that, you know, more male candidates were like this, but I wish that that the people who spoke out against male candidates, this was put up just as much as it would be for somebody like Marianne Williamson.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Let's go ahead and dive right in here. I want to start with this piece here about the goal. Our goal in making this statement is to be transparent and bring awareness to the fact that the campaign has been repeatedly sabotaged by the candidate herself. As a candidate, Marianne Williamson has consistently prevented staff from completing the work necessary to run a campaign or win an election, disregarding their experience and expertise. Despite having a staff full of competent professionals, she continually micromanages the campaign, disallowing any growth or forward momentum for the campaign as a whole. Williamson assigns tasks to staff that directly conflict with the advice of experts she hired. When staff complete the work as directed, their work is frequently picked apart and criticized by Williamson to the point that she backtracks on her own decisions and gaslights staff into believing the mix-up was their own doing. Okay. Her interactions with staff go beyond that of a tough boss, as she has claimed in her defense. Her behavior is frequently intimidating, demeaning, and demoralizing. All of us have worked demanding jobs with tough bosses. This was not the same. Working for her did not feel tough. It felt emotionally abusive and helpless. There is a difference between working for a demanding boss and feeling like you're walking on eggshells in every meeting. Okay, so I'm going to dive into, because like I said, this article is really long. I just want to comment on that really quick and get your take, JB. And then I'm going to go to the first section here, which is the shit show part. First thing I do want to say is that for those of you who have had bosses like this before, again, this is coming from the staffers, but from my own personal experience, I have had bosses before where they'll tell you to do something and then you do it, and then they'll yell at you for doing what they told you to do. And then the next thing you know, they make it seem like it's your fault for doing what they told you to do. Yeah. And that is not a good relationship.
Yeah. I think ultimately this needs to be put into perspective. This isn't just a campaign story. This is a labor story. You know, you have workers that are complaining about abuses by a boss, which in and of itself should be a damning indictment of Marianne Williamson. And the thing is that some people are going to twist this and saying it's a smear campaign. And it's like, well, when workers complained about Starbucks or Amazon, is that a smear campaign against Starbucks or Amazon? If the workers are coming forward collectively to actually say something, it's not just one or two. It is a group. And I think this article was a group of 7. Mm-hmm. And so this is the latest one. And if you notice, you know, any of the audience reads this, if you notice that if you go down the article, is that there's a pattern here. It's not just a one-off. And so I think this is something that people need to realize if they are going to be choosing someone like Marianne Williamson as their candidate, then they need to make an informed decision based on the historical analysis of the person that's being critiqued here.
That's right. That's right. Let's go in here. This is the first section. The Marianne campaign is a fucking shit show. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Woohoo!
I'm just going to try to hit certain parts that I think people probably need to hear. Many today have been turned on by her progressive Bernie Sanders style political policies, feeling frustrated at the Democratic Party they think isn't doing enough for them. but the glamour is falling off, and some think it should have long ago. A 1991 Vanity Fair article quoted internal sources saying that Marianne wants it to all be Marianne's. She is comfortable only when she controls everything, and that she wants to be powerful, recognized, and fawned over. I'm going to get back to that in just a second. A frustration for some, including in 2023, has been her insistence on injecting her brand of spirituality into everything that she does, including praying with staff for things like a boosted social media presence on Twitter and TikTok. So for this part, I do have to jump in and say, were they not aware of Marianne's like spirituality and like her faith before they decided to be a part of the campaign?
I honestly don't think they had that big of an idea, because the thing is that she was a brand before ever jumping into politics, into political life. I mean, she's been on Oprah Winfrey's show multiple times and basically giving spiritual advice to them. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say too, like, I knew that she was like that because she's talked about this a lot. Like, she has written books about this and stuff like this too. It's like for some of the people, like if you become a backup dancer for like Beyonce, for example, and Beyonce prays backstage with the dancers. You know, it's one of those things where it's like with Marianne, I felt like it was very well known because she did talk about it. Like she wrote books about it. And she was a spiritual advisor. So it goes, oh, go ahead.
Well, no, that's like going to someone's house who has crosses on their front door and you don't expect them to want to hold hands and pray before a meal.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think, yeah, I see what you mean. So the next section is her campaign is not a campaign. Now, JB, you know, you and I talked about this before. We're not going to dive into names here because the reason why the 7 people are not named is because of legal reasons. Yeah. So just FYI to the audience. But anyway, there was a post that we talked about before where it basically said that her campaign is not a campaign, it's just a book deal. It says here, the grift is the audience now that the days of lauded Oprah appearances are long gone, and she self-reports that her financial success has waned. She's just using this to be relevant to gain more followers who are going to purchase more of her books, her audio tapes, her live streams, and her in-person lectures. Politics is a tool for her to speak to people who aren't just spiritual or religious, asserts another staff member. And then it goes on to say that some are concerned by the crossover between the campaign and Williamson's business affairs, responsible for her tours, lectures, and book sales. Multiple staffers from Marianne's book tour and business end are in top campaign roles. There are people working on the Williamsons campaign that are invested in both sides, not wanting to piss her off, says a former 2024 campaign staffer. It says that Marianne had planned to release her latest book, The Mystic Jesus, The Mind of Love, in September 2023. But following public pressure, she released an announcement on July 21st that she was postponing the book for a second time, stating it might confuse the market. The book is now slated for spring 2024. So here's the thing, because you and I talked about the book thing. Here's the thing. It's not just her that has a book coming out. RFK also has a book coming out. See, and we've criticized this. We both of us like criticized like, Marianne, what's up? Why are you releasing a book in September? Why are you running for president? But RFK is also releasing a book in September. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to what you were just saying about why aren't people having that same criticism for RFK?
Yeah, that is also a valid criticism. And as far as Marianne Williamson's concerned, she knows how the Democratic Party works. This isn't her first rodeo. And so the funny part is, you know, I know, Marianne knows exactly what they're going to do to her. This is not a movie that's never been seen. And so, that being the case, if you know exactly how the Democratic Party is going to operate, I count on a snake being a snake. You count on a snake being a snake. And if I know how a snake operates, why am I going to pick it up and then let it bite me and then go, "Oh, you bit me"? And then the snake goes, "Well, you knew I was a snake when you first picked me up." And the thing is that here's the problem. The opinions shared by JB Font are not the opinions of the Sabby Sabs show. I'll put that disclaimer there. It feels like to me that she doesn't want you to know that she knows the snake is a snake. And so it's kind of like, do you really take us for fools that you honestly think that you have a chance? It feels like you know you don't have a chance, but this is going to increase your notoriety just so that you can have more of a lucrative book deal. And
right.
And I'm not trying to impugn the motives, but the thing is, like, if you really want to go up against Joe Biden, you don't do it in the primary, you do it in the general. Because ultimately, if you're going to go up against Joe Biden, you're not going to go up against him in his arena. And his arena is the Democratic primary, who they choose whoever is going to move on. And you know you're not going to be chosen. So the best possible strategy is actually going outside of it. But at the same time, she has never hinted at a dirty break. She said, it depends on how they treat me. And the thing is like, you're not saying an affirmative. The thing is that why even bother being in the Democratic Party and run with them in the first place if you know they're going to be dirty to you anyway?
That's a good point. It says here also in reference to the book, it says Williamson directed 2024 campaign staffers who'd like copies of her spiritual books to contact her assistant to have them purchased and shipped to them, allegedly using campaign funds. Now, I don't have any receipts to back that up. So
yeah,
just with finances, like again, finances, if you don't have the receipts, then I'm just like, I don't know. Someone said that another staffer emphasized, you're holding events where like 30 people show up. That is not a plan. That is not a field plan. And we've seen this when she held the event in South Carolina and Marcel Dixon confronted her about her reparations plan and told her that the amounts were wrong. We saw there wasn't many people in that room. So I have seen that too. So long story short, one of the things they're complaining about is that she doesn't really seem to have a field game, or that it's not a campaign is what they're saying.
Well, this is the biggest damning thing to me. Out of everything, it's you don't have a field plan. And when it comes, did you go into the part about ballot access yet?
Not yet.
Okay. But yeah, so the thing is that if you don't have a field plan like that, what's the point? Why are you really in the race? That's my question.
It's a good point. And there's this section that says she does not have plans. Williamson herself has publicly rejected the need for plans in campaigning and presidency. So it goes on to say that recently she appeared on Hassan Piker's show, and when she was asked about her plans to mobilize younger voters, she replied, well, I have not made an effort to mobilize young voters. I don't have any strategy like that. I did see that clip of that on Twitter. It goes on to say, former staffers have also been concerned about Williamson's lack of depth and knowledge about her own policies, which she did not personally write for the finer points of. She's never wanted to have a spontaneous conversation about healthcare or climate change, says a former team member. Another confirms she does not have plans. Some inside sources have additionally expressed unease over Williamson's inconsistent support for the LGBTQ community. Former staffers reported they wanted to participate more fully during Pride Month, but it was not made a priority. Multiple told Courage News. They were alarmed when the candidate said they were no longer allowed to ask for pronouns during meetings because it makes older people uncomfortable. This was actually surprising to hear, coming from, like, just keeping it real, like this piece right here, it makes older people uncomfortable and not allowing them to use their pronouns. That's surprising to hear in reference to Marianne.
I mean, so did women wearing pants, but they still did it anyway. Yeah. Back in the day. I mean, my thing is, it's like, look, the times are changing. It's like, get used to it, But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. Like, look, you're in the Democratic Party. You're in a liberal setting. Pronouns are going to be brought up. And so you might as well get used to it. And if somebody just is slightly uncomfortable with it, then they're going to have to get used to it. I mean, not everybody, like, for instance, it's just like being in the campaign and you have somebody who's a woman that's a Muslim that's wearing a hijab. You may be uncomfortable with it, but guess what? You're going to have to get comfortable with it because that's their culture, and that's respecting them. So, I mean, you're not going to stand up for the people who are LGBTQ, who actually want to, have their pronouns respected, and you call yourself a Democratic candidate? Like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I think, and the thing is, I think for people, whether they agree with this issue or not, I still feel like it's surprising coming from her, of all people.
Yeah.
Next section says at least 30 Marianne 2024 staffers are gone. Former Marianne Williamson campaign staff are also dismayed at the extreme turnover in their ranks, both from firings and resignations. As of the last FEC report, Williamson's wayward 2024 campaign has lost at least 30 staffers. This has been reportedly led to internal confusion due to having multiple campaign managers and contrasting directives, including Williamson. It goes on here to mention what happened during the days, like in the 90s, when she worked with, like, the AIDS charity. So it says that she's had turbulence before with past leadership of organizations, including her LA-based AIDS charity in the 90s, which experienced high turnover and multiple fired executive directors. Her tenure as the leader of Renaissance Unity Interfaith Spiritual Fellowship in Michigan faced similar controversy when an attorney local to the church saying at the time the church is in deficit and she's laid off 3/4 of the staff. So I think the point that there does seem to be a pattern.
Yeah. Gosh. And, she just, there's this deficit, of respect that it feels like. And after reading Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Von Price, one of the things that they brought out was that when you have high turnover rates and they go into things like having a lot of tardiness and calling out things like that, it shows that the workers are experiencing a certain type of abuse by the employer or the higher ups, which cause the employees to react in a certain way. So if you're having such a high turnover rate, then of course, then that speaks to who's at the helm, who's the leadership, and what are they doing to the employees that makes them not want to stay and retain those employees. And so this really just goes to show in the character of Marianne Williamson. This to me screams when the mainstream media, especially MSNBC and CNN, kept going, oh my God, another person left the Trump cabinet. Oh my goodness, this person left, that person left. And they were trying to paint Donald Trump as somebody who was just a bad boss. Well, you can do the same thing for Joe Biden. You can do the same thing for anybody who's running the presidential campaign. because how many campaign managers has she had so far?
Right. And early on, it doesn't look good. Another piece that they mentioned here, I highlighted this: campaign staffers who previously worked on campaigns as well as other professional work say they have never seen anything like this, with some calling Williamson's behavior Trump-like. One noted Marianne had a way of making us feel worthless. According to several former staffers, Williamson has a long-standing pattern of disregarding professional expertise, taking over the roles of professionals herself, forgetting that she assigned tasks, and then chastising staff for doing those tasks, which evidence reviewed by Courage News corroborates. Remember what I was telling you about the managers that'll tell you to do a task and then they get mad at you for doing what they told you to do?
Yeah, that. Have you ever had one manager tell you to do one thing and the other manager tell you to do the opposite? And so it's like, well, who's higher? Well, if nobody's higher, you just do what that manager told you. And then I go to the other manager and tell them, they told me to do this. I'm about to do this. So don't get mad at me. I'm going to do it. And then they stop me like, no, don't do it. I'll be like, oh, well, okay. Then I'll go back to the other one. I'll be like, hey, they told me not to do this. You guys need to talk amongst yourselves. So that's how I usually did it. But
Right. And this point here, former staffers dispute this characterization, with one stating they felt like they were building the car while we were driving it. Several noted the campaign was an amateur operation. This is not how presidential campaigns are run. But she ran for president in 2020. This is not the first time.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
I mean, I'm just keeping it real. Like, I know they say this is amateur, but this is not the first time that she's run for president. Just like for those who are not aware, this next piece, Marianne is a traumatic person to work for. If this shit gets out in public, people aren't going to want to vote for her because she's a terrible fucking person, says a source familiar with Williamson's conduct. According to several former staffers, Williamson's campaign is marked by a do not dissent atmosphere and erratic and volatile conduct. If you told her something she didn't like, your days were numbered. Sources suggested that Williamson has a pattern of undermining, belittling, and chewing out staff while micromanaging all campaign elements. Ex-employees say, and evidence reviewed by this outlet corroborates, it was not uncommon for staff to be texted and called at all hours of the day or night, often to deal with things like a single unfavorable tweet from a low followed account on Twitter, and that they were working 7 days a week with no real breaks. So again, to me, this isn't a campaign issue. To your point, JB, this is a labor issue.
Yes. I'm going to be honest with you. Marianne Williamson really needs to pick up Laziness Does Not Exist, because I just covered that part of the chapter when it talks about, putting people way past their labor time, past their work, and micromanagement and stuff like that. That's just an abusive atmosphere. I mean, and that's what it is. And my thing is that ultimately this is just a boss that is acting honestly in a deeply capitalist way. That's what I noticed from reading this article. And the thing is that if somebody like her is willing to do this to workers, then of course, how is that person going to feel when running the country if she's actually running to win? That's the question.
Right. Considering too all the strikes that have happened in the past year and a half, what would be her response? What would have been her response when the railroad workers tried to go on strike?
My question is her campaign unionized?
I don't know.
And that, if I was running a campaign, that would be one of the first things I would say. My campaign's unionized. I encourage them to unionize. I honestly will put it like this, and this goes for any candidate whatsoever. If you have a campaign, and your campaign within the first 6 months is not unionized, I'm gonna look at you some kind of way. It goes for anybody.
It's weird, like working 7 days a week. Like, how is that allowed? I don't know if they signed a contract. I'm pretty sure they signed NDAs, which is why they can't release their names because of legal issues. But what if they signed a contract? What did the contract say? But still, like working 7 days a week. It goes on to say that once she decides she doesn't like you, you're out. Multiple sources confirm that Williamson responds particularly well to fans and volunteers who shower her with praise, sometimes giving them her personal phone number or email address and trying to find roles for them on the campaign. This positive feeling of welcome is confirmed by multiple current Williamson campaign volunteers who tell this outlet they do not believe the negative reporting about the candidate. This starkly contrasts with how staff are treated. Former staff say, leaving them feeling like they are walking on eggshells. She wants to be surrounded by fans, not staffers. Eyewitnesses and those personally impacted reveal her screaming at staff and creating a hostile environment. This is not the first time we heard about this, JB.
No, and I'm gonna be honest with you, this sounds very Trumpian.
No, man, this is what they were saying. So, those reports align with the same that 2020 campaign staffers were reporting. And I talked about that, so I'm not going to go through all of that again. But this part here is important. High work demands have led to physical and mental health impacts of 2024 staff, which every former staffer Courage News spoke with confirmed, sometime through tears. Some report that the abuse got to the point where their families became concerned. Hearing her yell at them on the phone, as hard as you're working, you need to work 10 times harder, was the ethos. Oof.
That sounds like, yeah, I want you to make bricks without straw now. That's what that sounds like to me. That's some Pharaoh against the Egyptians. I'm sorry, against the Hebrew slaves type of thing to me. It's just it's like, what are you doing? Like, and my thing is, like, if you want people to work, if you want more effort to go into it, well, then number one, are you paying your staffers a living? That's the question. That's another question. Are you paying your staffers a living wage? Number one. Number two, if you are and you need more output, then are you hiring more workers so that the workers that you currently have don't burn themselves out?
Those are all good points. There's more here about her micromanaging. One went on to say that to be president, you have to allow people to work within their expertise, and she refuses to let people do that. And then I want to get to this piece here where it says that multiple sources and internal staff and volunteer calls reviewed by Courage News show that Williamson leans on the line that misogyny is all to blame when those who've worked with her call out how they've been treated. What does this remind you of, JB?
Oh, don't ask me that. Sabs, I know the answer to the question, but all right. Oh, geez. Okay, this sounds like Hillary Clinton.
This reminds me of when Nick and I were interviewing Marianne, and she told Nick that he was mansplaining. That's what this reminds me of. Williamson leans on the line that misogyny is all to blame when those who've worked with her call out how they've been treated. That's what this reminds me of. When Nick tried to correct her in reference to, Israel and Palestine, and she said, "Oh, honey, don't mansplain to me." Remember that?
Yeah, I remember. And what I think is that, is misogyny a non-factor? Absolutely not. It is a factor, but it's not the factor.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's the same thing with, let's say, somebody like Dr. West. Could racism be a factor? Yes, but it won't be the factor. Same thing with Obama. Was racism a factor or the factor? You know, and so the thing is that you have some of these people who they would attribute to being racist, and they voted for Obama twice before they voted for Trump. So it's like, how much weight does the misogyny claim really have? You know, and you know this better than I do, you know, as a woman, you know, but just as a man from the outside looking in, you know, as somebody that's part of a marginalized group, I don't attribute it to the entirety of why any complaints would come your way.
There you go. Next section, fear inside the campaign, literally fucking scared of Marianne. Some by Williamson's side are alleging too scared to stop working for her due to the potential personal fallout and for economic reasons, including those involved in both the political and business side of her operations, according to several sources. Multiple former staffers and those familiar brought this up unprompted, with one noting Marianne is more abusive to someone who works for her than anyone else. This person has not responded to a request for comment. One staffer emphasizes, several of us are concerned about her treatment of blank. From what we've seen, it's like this person is literally fucking scared of Marianne. A source believes some who stick by Williamson bow down to her as though she is some religious figure and take her abuse because they are literally worshiping her. Others, they think, feel stuck and worried about what will happen to them if they leave or go against her. Because let's keep it real. Even the people who came out with this information, even though their names aren't mentioned, if people who worked on that campaign connect the dots, they can probably figure out who these people are. And it could be really difficult for those people to get another job going forward. Mm-hmm. Right? Like this could be a career killer if you come forward with this information.
Yeah. That's the fear of retaliation that a lot of companies have when it comes to abuse in their rules or their code of conduct. They typically have clauses, or they typically have fail safes for just in case an employer or somebody higher up wants to retaliate. And if you have a fear of retaliation within an organization, that just looks bad upon the person who is being accused, because if they say anything, then they're proverbially their heads on the chopping block, which speaks to why all the people are anonymous in this article.
Right. Next section says Marianne's invite only social media attack squad. Please keep this between us. She thought she was going to win the campaign by being a TikTok star, says a former staffer. A scan of social media will show many positive things people have to say about Marianne, which may partially be because the campaign has a secret official social media attack squad for volunteers. Courage News has acquired a document revealing an invite-only Marianne 2024 debunkers team, which evidence shows Williamson requested to have, calling it an army. The document's stated mission is to counteract lies and negativity about Williamson online. Also noted in the document is to please keep this between us. Current campaign manager Carlos Cardona asked volunteers on a July 11th call to protect the queen of social media. Notice how if you criticize Marianne on Twitter, a swarm of people come in and you get attacked.
Sometimes I wonder, is it Bayhive or is it Marianne Williamson supporters?
But it's not just her. This one I will say, that's not just her. A lot of candidates have that.
Yeah, they do. My question though is, do they have a DM group that is just exclusively for that for all candidates, or is it just, for instance, this one? Because I've been in DM groups where they supported Bernie Sanders, but it wasn't like, you just go debunk whoever it was. It was just, a support group. So I wonder if this is, specifically a DM group in other campaigns as well as Marianne Williamson's. That I don't know because I'm not in any DM groups like that, but I am curious to know if, ones like RFK, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, if they have any of those too.
Yeah, this issue right here, the debunking team scours social media platforms for anything negative about Marianne so they can respond in mass. We were told earlier on that our focus would be social media. One former volunteer admits. Another adds, she really only cares about her social media presence and her social image. This is not unique to Marianne. Like some of the things in this article, I just have to acknowledge, like, especially for the audience, this is not just a Marianne thing. I remember when Hillary Clinton had her swarm of people. Remember, correct the record? She had her swarm of accounts that came after the Bernie people, like any negative comments that were made about Hillary Clinton. Like, so this thing right here, I don't know if the staffers are aware of that, but this thing about scouring social media for anything negative about Marianne, that's not unique to Marianne.
Oh, Sabs, let me tell you, I hope you don't break out in hives when I say this, but remember K-Hive.
Yep.
It came out in droves. Oh my God. Yeah, it was like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Like, goddamn.
Yeah, it goes on to say another volunteer attests volunteers were doing her dirty work on social media. Multiple sources reported that there are incentives to defend the candidate online, including the chance to win a 15-minute call with her directly if you protect her well enough. Something one former volunteer found to be particularly narcissistic. Again, this issue here does not surprise me at all. It just doesn't. Like I've seen this before with other campaigns. This section, former Marianne 2024 campaign manager Peter Dow, staff concerns should always be taken with utmost seriousness. So let me explain for people who are not aware, and I'll come back to the article. Peter Dow was the original campaign manager, and then he announced that he was stepping down from that position, but he didn't give the reason why, and that gave people on Twitter to form their own conclusions. So I do think, later on, he came back and said that he has to take care of his parents, that kind of thing, a personal thing. But I think it would have been best if that's the case, that he said that in the beginning, he's stepping down for personal reasons, things he has to take care of his own life. Didn't have to go into detail. But when you just left that out in the open like that, it made people just form their own conclusions.
Makes me wonder, like, when he said that, when he said he was stepping down without saying it was for personal reasons, then never mind. I don't want to speculate. It's just, it feels like if Peter Dow had said that initially, people wouldn't have came up with different types of conspiracy theories in their head. And then, if it almost feels like an excuse after the fact, or it's like, oh no, it's not what you guys think. It was actually because of personal reasons with my parents. And I was like, well, why didn't you just say it was for personal reasons in the first place?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's just my brain, but.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go back in here. Okay. So the Peter Dow issue, it goes on to say that Dow, who has worked as a top advisor on multiple, JB, I'll mute you so I don't get echo. Multiple top advisor on multiple political campaigns, tells me I've made a commitment in 2024 election to work on expanding options for voters beyond the failing two-party system. My work with Marianne was part of that mission. In the month I was campaign manager, I restructured her team, cut costs, and positioned the campaign for long-term viability. I respect the team members I work with who put their hearts into the campaign, and I believe staff concerns should always be taken with the utmost seriousness. I hope a progressive platform like Marianne's remains available to voters. But what? Because up here it says multiple sources confirm former Marianne 2024 campaign manager Peter Dow tried to rectify these issues, before leaving the campaign due to family health concerns. And one of the issues that was brought up, to your point, JB, not providing health care for her campaign team and not implementing unionization. Now, if that's true, that's a problem, because if she's one of the candidates that's running on Medicare for all, if she didn't provide health care to her employees, that's a problem.
That's absolutely one of the biggest issues. If you're not willing to do this for your workers, then are you going to be willing to do it for the American people? That's a question I think that everybody needs to ask. If you're not willing to look, do not come to me and talk about the Teamsters Union or the rail workers union, and yet your staff is not unionized. Don't tell me that you're for unions and you didn't encourage unions within your own campaign. Because if you're not going to walk the walk, then guess what? Then why are you even speaking in the first place? Because the thing is to me, it's just empty rhetoric.
It goes on to say, continuing the abuse, smearing staff when they leave. Okay. Williamson has claimed that the former staffers who complained about her campaign, how her campaign is being run, don't know what they're talking about. She has insinuated that those departing with anything negative to say had sinister intentions, were in step with the DNC, or were inept a similar tactic she used against staff who spoke out from her 2020 campaign. Allegations of former staff and volunteers being DNC plants is not just personally hurtful, it's professionally harmful, says a former staffer. What do you think about that, JB? What do you think about the accusation that the people who are complaining about the campaign were basically DNC plants?
You'll never work in this town again. Basically, it's like, oh, you know how the sausage is made, so therefore you're never going to work in this area again. Instead of actually taking some of the critique by somebody who's a former staffer and then maybe tweaking your campaign in order to be better, it's just, oh, this person, they're harmful. They shouldn't ever work at a campaign ever again because they dare critique us, even if the critique was valid and even if the critique was done in a kind way without being disagreeable.
This piece right here, former campaign volunteers have expressed distrust and unease over how Williamson has handled staff departures. The people who are close to her within the campaign tell volunteers and supporters these people are bad. These people are evil. Former volunteers also reported they have been ostracized from online progressive groups by current volunteers after no longer supporting Williamson. The campaign really just wants to blacklist former volunteers, supporters and staff who speak out. I agree with that. I believe that because for the way that they come after people who don't want to support Marianne.
Yeah.
Like we see it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you dare speak against the queen, then they want to off with your head, so it's like blacklist. Yeah.
Delvia said Marianne is a DNC plan.
In the words of my lovely fellow white people, no shit, Sherlock. That's what it feels like to me. It's just like, yeah, Delphia, I agree, but yeah, it's not good. It's just like Donald Trump said, it's not good. It's not good.
No, we get into another finance issue. Another source asserts urgently in relation to the smears, Marianne is siphoning off funds, time, and energy from people who would describe themselves as left-wing and no real intention of becoming president of the United States. Siphoning off funds See, again, for me, when we talk about like the finance issues, I said the same thing in reference to the smears about Cornel West, about the tax issue. You need to show receipts.
Yeah. That may be a FEC violation in the making.
This is why it's important to have like receipts in reference to that. And then the legal issues. Marianne Williamson's legal threats and fear of the press. Marianne has long had an up and down relationship with the press. 1992 People magazine story reported demands that staff not speak to reporters. With Marianne exploding, "You're fucking with my livelihood. I'm famous. I don't need this. Damn it."
I'm sorry. Yo, this sounds like some Hollywood type shit. Like, I can see her with a martini glass and she's swishing around and spilling. She's like, "I'm famous. I don't need this, god damn it." I'm sorry.
This part here is very telling. It said in June 2023, staff call for her 2024 campaign reviewed by Courage News. Williamson warned the team against press leaks, saying, "It would certainly be my hope that none of you were talking to the press. Hopefully you're not leaking." Williamson reportedly does not like staff calls being recorded. The candidate recently publicly posted a contradictory message on Twitter, implying she welcomes the press talking to staff, saying, "My staff is fine, wonderful, fun to work with. Ask reporters to talk to them sometime." This has proven difficult given the Williamson NDAs and legal threats, leaving some former and current staff tight-lipped. And I also want to add here too, NDAs are also not uncommon in reference to political campaigns.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But how are you going to go to your staff? "Don't y'all say nothing. You better not say nothing to them." Oh, yes. I love when they talk. This, okay. Not trying to impugn anybody's motives. But when a parent is not doing the right thing by their kids, it's like, when we go into that office, you better act like you got some sense or I'm going to knock your behind out. And then next thing you know, it's like, "Oh, yeah, I love my children. And yes, they speak to me and they give me their feedback when it comes to me being a parent. And of course, I like for them to speak their mind." Next thing you know, they look at their kid like, "I dare you to say some shit." That's what it feels like to me reading that. Am I wrong? Am I
It reminds me of, you ever saw the movie The 5 Heartbeats?
No, I feel, oh my God, my black card is going to be revoked right now.
No, JB. In the movie,
I did see the Temptations movie though. I did see that. The 5 Heartbeats, no. Sorry.
Okay, well let's use the Temptations movie. Remember in the Temptations movie, Leon, who played David Ruffin's character, said, "Y'all's mama's boys. Y'all be nothing without me. Nothing without David Ruffin." That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. I'll make your asses.
Yes, Danny saw 5 Heartbeats. In 5 Heartbeats, Big Red, the character Big Red, he beat up one of the singers, not of the 5 Heartbeats, but a different group that he managed. And he said, "Now, my office hours are..." It's funny. You guys see the movie to get the joke, JB, but it's funny.
Yeah. I'll try to make sure that I get it.
Okay. Cult-like and narcissistic behavior. It feels like a literal cult. Several sources allege cult-like and narcissistic behavior from the once acclaimed New Age spiritual leader. One former volunteer put it bluntly, "It feels like a literal cult." Multiple former staff sources are concerned that the political campaign events are sometimes held in churches and that they have been required to pray based on Williamson's ideology. Multiple confirmed that you're out if you dare say a word against the leader. The fuck is this? Cult expert and author of Cults Inside Out, Rick Allen Ross, notes there are levels to cult-like behavior, but has concerns that charismatic personalities like Williamson's create systems where questioning the leader's authority results in punishment and ostracization. He further emphasizes that the godlike image constructed by the leader can exploit people to act against their own self-interest and leaves the leader free from accountability. The leader hurts people and it costs them if they leave. He noted several red flags about Williamson from our conversation. I think the key to her behavior really can't be separated from the ideology of the book she's dedicated her life to teaching, A Course in Miracles. All is, what does it say? Oh, sorry. Says Matthew Rimsky of the Conspirituality podcast, who himself was involved in what he considers to have been a cult based on the book's teachings. He too saw cause for concern, saying among other things. And then I think this is the last part, but I want to get your take on the cult-like behavior, JB.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's when you have a certain belief system and you try to force people into that belief system when it's not an organization based on that belief system, then really you're just, in a sense, shoving your beliefs down the throat of other people, especially when it comes to religious beliefs. And that is not right. It's just like, but at the same time, if you're going to have that, then you need to let people know that that's how it is before they even get in. It's just like, for instance, there's a hospital called Advent Health here in Orlando, Florida, and everybody knows it's an Adventist hospital. They even have a little blurb underneath says an Adventist hospital, which means a religious hospital. And so they are religious, but you know that the minute you apply for the job, a lot of people aren't realizing that she is going to apply this throughout and have it threaded throughout inside of her campaign. So because of that, then some people are caught by surprise when they have this. And then on top of it, to not be able to critique the head of the organization, yeah, that is extremely cult-like behavior if that is true. And the question is are there any examples of it, happening where they can critique and not get any type of and not get any type of pushback, not pushback, but
right.
Right. Yeah. So my thing is like is there any combating of that claim, that any receipts basically against that claim?
Right. This final piece here says former staffers don't want you to vote for Marianne Williamson. This is so weird for me because I loved and adored this woman. That's part of the problem, I think, the hero worship right there. Said one source who believes Williamson should not become president. Another said, I don't want this fucking shit show of a campaign to damage the progressive movement. She needs to stop getting paid. People need to stop wasting money on her, expresses another former staffer. Her campaign is a fraud. She's defrauding everyone who donates to her. In multiple now deleted tweets, Williamson herself has doubted her suitability for public office, saying, I wouldn't be a good mayor or a good governor either, for that matter. Those are managerial positions, and it's not my forte. A former staffer asserts she does care about people as a concept, but she would not have any idea of how to do the job as president. Goes on to say, I do not trust Marianne has the ability to lead a nation. I do not want her with the nuclear codes. They go on to add, I don't want to tell anybody to read your books. I want to erase every moment I ever talked about you online. As for Williamson, she has said the best piece of advice she's ever received is to get over yourself. yeah, it's not about you. Marianne Williamson's campaign has not responded to a request for additional comment. JB, you know, when we think about everything that's been said, and I'll go back to the beginning for the new peeps so they can see the title. What's your takeaway? Again, exclusive 7X Marianne Williamson staffers say stop supporting her.
If you have people on the inside that are growing in mass and telling the truth about something, you at least want to give it a grain of salt. I remember when you and Nick had interviewed her, and one of Nick's questions was that people have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the Bernie Sanders campaign, and we really made out with nothing. And what is your answer to people basically not wanting to invest all this money into a campaign that is not going to give us results? And she basically said, well, just don't vote for me. I think we should take her at her word. If someone tells you who they are, believe them. The first time, believe them. And the thing is that that interview that you and Nick did was eye-opening for us to see who she was, because a lot of times people will shy away from interviews where somebody may push back or challenge them or be somewhat adversarial, because they don't want you to see behind that curtain. Remember in Wizard of Oz, do not go back to that man behind the curtain. I think that's what it was. It was a behind the curtain scene. And unfortunately, articles like this are further pushing that narrative that who's
JB, I think you froze.
Is really going to be. Am I still here? Can you still hear me? Okay. I hearken back to what, and not the best example, what Michelle Obama said. She said that the presidency does, reveals who you are. And if that's the case, then if we're seeing Marianne Williamson, from their account, I'd hate to see her as commander-in-chief of the country, which honestly, I don't even think she's really vying for, because given the circumstances of the Democratic Party.
Well said. Well said. Well, JB, thank you so much for joining me for this story. Before you go again, where can people find you?
Yeah, so guys can find me, of course, on Revolutionary Blackout Network, just like Sabby Sabs, but you guys can also find me on my channel at JB Font. You guys could just go ahead and look that up on YouTube. I'm also on Rockfin and Rumble, Twitch, and Facebook if you guys would like to, as well as you guys can find me also on Twitter at JB Font as well. And yeah, I talk about political issues, and I also push out a dad joke or two. So you never know what you'll see from me.
That's right. All right, JB, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Sabs. And it was a privilege to be here. Take care, Sabs. Bye, Eric.
Bye. All right, guys. Really interesting story there. I don't know, man. When you have 7 people come forward, it's 7 people. Like, I don't know.